Hello and welcome to CS303 Operating Systems. Today we are going to start a new chapter. This is chapter number 4 and the title of the chapter is Threads and Concurrency. Okay. So today we start a new chapter, chapter number 4, titled Threads and Concurrency. So this is chapter 4, lecture 1. Once again, this is chapter 4, lecture 1. Okay, so these are the various topics that we are going to discuss in this chapter. First, we will start off by discussing or giving an introduction to threads. Okay. Next, we will discuss why we have multi-threading and specifically what are the advantages that we can gain by having this multi-threading. Okay, and of course, what are the costs involved? Nothing comes for free. Third part of the chapter is we look at a thread API for Linux. So API, we know what's the full form of API. Full form of API is application programming interface. So what that means is we will be given a family or a series or a set of C functions, and each of them will be performing some kind of thread operation. So once again, from the programmer's point of view, from our point of view, the job is easy. We just have to call the appropriate API and then that thread operation will be performed. So we don't need to bother too much about implementation of that function. What we need to do is we need to know what the function does. We need to know what are the arguments and what is the significance of each argument, because we have to pass those arguments, and then we also have to know what is the return type. Right. So for that, memory mapping mmap, we know that if the mapping was successful, the return type was a pointer to the mapping. Right. So we need to know what is the return type so that we can use it in a program accordingly. Right. And finally, then we will look at some multi-threading examples. Okay. So now I am on slide 3. So as such, this is not a very long chapter, and these are the objectives of this chapter. To introduce the notion of a thread, a fundamental unit of CPU utilization that forms the basis of multi-threaded computer systems. Okay. So as such, we know that each application or each program has a series of instructions. So here what we'll see is in a particular program, we can have sets of instructions or sets of series of instruction that can potentially run in parallel. Okay, so we call such a system or such an application multi-threaded. Okay, so essentially we'll get an introduction to what threads are, why do we use them, and then finally we'll discuss the API for Linux threads. Okay. So to learn about threads, the basic concept of a thread, what are the advantages of using threads, and then finally to do some multi-threaded programming. So these are the objectives of this chapter number 4. Okay. So now I have a slide number 4, which is the title motivation. Okay. So just to read a bit from the book, what it says is the process model introduced in chapter number 3 assumed that a process was an executing program with a single thread of control. Okay. So when we are executing a process, what does it mean? It means that we are executing a series of instructions. Okay. So instruction 1, 2, 3, 4 going on in a sequence. Okay. So each process has a series of instructions which we execute, one at a time, right? So the assumption was that one particular process has exactly one thread of control, right? So you have that means one set of instructions which it is running sequentially. Virtually all modern operating systems, however, provide features enabling a process to contain multiple threads of control. So what this means is that now in even if you take a mobile phone or of course a desktop and laptop, you see that it has multiple CPUs, multiple cores. So what that means is at any one point of time multiple processes can be supported. What it also means is that for one particular process multiple sequences of instruction execution can be supported, right? So the key idea is, given a particular process, can I identify sets of instructions which are more or less independent? If I can, so let's say I have identified 4 sets of independent instructions, right? So set 1 is let's say SA to SB, set 2 is SX to XY, and so on. So if I have identified these 4 sets of instructions which are independent, we don't exchange data with each other, then I can execute each of them in parallel, one set of instructions on each CPU. Okay. So identifying opportunities for parallelism through the use of threads is becoming increasingly important in modern multi-core systems that provide multiple CPUs. So for a process, if you can identify the various sets of independent instructions, each set could be executed on a separate CPU, and what that means is all those sets are running concurrently in parallel. So the net gain is your application or your process finishes earlier, right? So essentially that is the main reason why we use threads, to exploit the parallelism offered by multi CPU systems on our desktops, on our servers, on our laptops, on our mobiles, so that our process runs faster, it finishes earlier. Okay. So how we do that is what we're going to look at. Okay. So we have seen in chapter 3 that a process is a unit of work. It is a program that is executing a sequence of instructions, and while executing those instructions, the process needs access to resources such as CPU, memory, IO devices, and files. So we know all of that. So the key idea of threads is that it is possible, right? It is possible to have several sequences of instructions within a process. So as we just discussed, in a particular process you can have several sequences or sets of instructions which can run in parallel. Now each of those sets, each of those sequences of instructions is called a thread. Okay. So it may be possible to examine the code of a process and identify parts that can potentially be run independently of each other, in other words in parallel. In fact, let's say if you're working as an OS engineer, right? So one of the tasks that could be given to you is, look at this process that we have, right? Whether it's a user process or a kernel process, and examine the instructions and then try to figure out which of these instructions can be parallelized, right? So right now all of them are running sequentially. Now examining the instructions, come out with sets of instructions which are independent, which can run in parallel, and then each set goes on a separate CPU. Okay. So that's the general idea. One important point: all threads operate in the same address space of a creator process. So whenever we create a process or program, we will be assigned an address space there by the operating system, within the main memory. So which will contain our text section as we saw in chapter 3, the process code. It will contain data. The data could be local, it could be global. It will contain a stack, right, for function calls. It will contain a heap for dynamic memory allocation. So the address space will have all of these components. Now whenever within a process we create multiple threads, we'll soon see how to create those. Then we note that all those threads share the same address space of the creator process. Okay. So all threads operate in the same address space of the creator process. So the picture in the next slide shows a fundamental difference between a single threaded process and a multi-threaded process. So once again, the idea is within a process, it is possible to have many sets of instructions, and each set can execute independently of the other set, and all instructions can execute in parallel, each on a separate CPU. So of course, from this parallel execution, we are hoping to finish the job earlier, right? So for example, process takes 20 seconds, right? And let's say within the process we have been able to identify. So we take the set of all instructions in that process. Just as an example, we take the set of all instructions of the process and we divide it into 4 parts, 4 sets of instructions. Let's say all 4 are independent, and then we run all of them parallelly. And let's say for the sake of argument, all of them take the same amount of time. So which means now when can the process finish? Well, if you have 4 CPUs, only in 5 seconds. So from 20 seconds we are down to 5. If you have 2 CPUs, then 10 seconds, right? So CPU 1, 5, then 5, 1 part, second part, CPU 2, 5 and 5, third part, fourth part. So that's the idea, to create sequences of instructions, or to create threads. So each sequence of instruction which can be run in parallel is called a thread, and then to execute a thread on a separate CPU. So parallel execution, finishing the job earlier. Okay. Okay, so now I am on slide number 5, and here we have a very informative picture that shows us the difference between a single threaded process and a multi-threaded process, right? Single threaded process versus multi-threaded process. So you can see on the left what you have is various components of a process which we discussed in chapter 3. So you have the code of the process, right? The instructions. You have the data, right? Data can be local, global. You have in the various files. So while a process is executing, it can open many files, right? For each file, it's assigned a file descriptor, right? And then using that file descriptor, it can do reads and writes, right? So in the previous chapters, we saw that a pipe is treated as a file. Even in shared memory, that block of memory is treated as a file. So information about all files which are open, right? For reads and writes, definitely. Then you have information about registers, right? Which registers are being used, right? Their contents, their addresses, and so on, right? Because those are needed by the instructions. And then you have the stack, which are for your function calls, right? So this just shows the snapshot of a process. Now this process has a single thread of control, so you can see these threads, and what each thread contains is a sequence of instructions. Okay, so this is a thread, and it contains a sequence of instructions. So possibly one way you can visualize this is you have a thread, and then if you have a necklace, on threads you have certain number of beads, right? So each bead corresponds to one particular instruction. So if you have a necklace which has beads, each bead corresponds to one instruction, and then using the thread they are all tied together, and they are executed in a sequence. So instruction 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So each thread corresponds to a set of instructions. What do we see on the right hand side? Again, this is one process, right? Only one process. And how many threads of instructions does this one have? It has 3 threads. So it can have less, it can have more, right? You can have 2, you can have 10, 100, whatever. And you can see that some of the context of the process it is sharing with other threads, and that is code, data and files. Okay. So the code section, the data section and the file section is shared. Okay. Whereas for each thread, what are the new things it gets of its own? Registers and stack. So stack for making function calls, registers for doing executing instructions. It can maybe each thread could be executing a different instruction, right? One of the registers could be the instruction register, right, which holds the instruction currently being executed. Okay. Okay, so what we know is a thread is a basic unit of CPU utilization, right? Because how are we utilizing the CPU? How are we keeping the CPU busy? By supplying it with instructions to execute. So each thread has a set of instructions which keeps the CPU busy, which makes sure that the CPU is utilized. Thread comprises of a thread ID, right? So just like you have a process ID, you have a thread ID as well, used to identify the thread, a program counter, right, address of the next instruction, set of registers local to it, and a stack. It shares with other threads belonging to the same process its code section, data section and other operating system resources such as open files and signals. Okay. So traditional process has a single thread of control. If a process has multiple threads of control, it can perform more than one task at a time. Okay, so what we learn from this slide is some structures a thread has of its own, right, registers and stack, right, and other structures it shares among the other threads of the same process. So open files are shared among all threads that belong to a process. So this makes communication easy. Thread number 1 can write to a file, thread number 2 can read from it. Okay. Right. So note that this is different from a parent and child. Parent child, both of them get their own address spaces. Code is shared, right, and so is some data. Okay. So I hope this is clear, right? Okay, now I am on slide number 6. Title of this is threads. So if you look back upon the previous picture, the one given on slide number 5, you can see that in the second case there are multiple threads of instructions belonging to the same process. Okay. Okay. So essentially one way you can look at it is process defines the address space, the program text, the resources and so on, whereas the thread defines a single sequential execution stream within a process. So a thread defines a single sequential execution stream within a process, and it has its own program counter, its own stack, its own registers. Okay. So as we discussed, each thread has its own set of registers and execution stack. So whatever is needed for that separate execution of instructions, a thread has that. Okay. So the thread will extract the thread information from the process, which means the code. Okay, all threads share the code, certain data and files with each other, as we saw in the previous slide. So as said, the code will be in one location and it will be shared among all the threads. Okay. So as an example of a real life application, we can consider the Microsoft Word process, right? So now here, can we identify some tasks which can run independently of each other within Microsoft Word? So one thread could be used for responding to user keystrokes. So let's say you're typing in a document, you're typing in a bunch of characters. What is the result of that? As you type those characters, the characters they are streamed. They travel from your keyboard right up to your application, Word application. And then where are they output? Well, whatever character you type in, it's output back to the screen, so you can see what you typed in. Okay. So one thread could be used for responding to user keystrokes, which means identify which characters the user typed in on their keyboard, and then display that character on the screen within the Word application. So one thread can execute all the instructions related to this job, right? Another thread could be used to display graphics, right? Yet another thread could perform a grammar and spell check in runtime. So let's say while you're inputting the keystrokes, if you have your spell check feature on, and let's say you typed something wrong, instead of GRAMMAR for grammar, you typed in GRAMMR. So then you'll get a red underline below that particular word, signifying that you made a spelling mistake. So think about the process 1, which is for user keystrokes, and process 2, which is for doing grammar and spell check. So both of them are executing in parallel. Okay. So like this, within a program you can have many processes which are sort of executing in parallel. Okay. So what's happening is, as you're typing the keystrokes, the grammar spell check feature is monitoring that process 1, which has to do with the keystrokes, user keystrokes. It's monitoring it, and then depending on the case, it's giving a red underline. So as such, both of them are running in parallel. Yeah. So important point here is, all threads would be running independently. Okay. So that is the key. All the threads have to run independently. Okay. Advantage of this, of course, we discussed. You can get more work done per unit time. So case 1, you have a set of instructions, all of them execute sequentially. Now if you can extract chunks of instructions and run them in parallel on multiple CPUs, your finish time will be early. So we did that example in which a process was taking 20 seconds, and then we divided it into 4 chunks, equal chunks of instructions, and provided we have 4 CPUs, the whole process finishes in 5 seconds. Okay. So this is the primary advantage of using threads, supporting parallel execution, ensuring that you are getting more work done. More work done means you're executing more instructions per unit time. Okay, so very desirable feature to have. So now I am on slide 7, titled web browser. So another example of a multi-threaded application is a web browser. Right. So we can the many tasks which can be run in parallel here. Scroll a page while an image is downloading. Right. So one process is handling the scrolling of a page, and another process is handling the downloading of an image of that web page. Both of them are running independently. Play an animation with its sound together. Right. So an animation is playing, that's one process, and in parallel its sound is playing, another process. Print a page while loading a new page. Both can happen in parallel. So many other examples are possible. So key idea is, given a process, try to identify, multiple sets of instructions, multiple threads, which can execute in parallel. Okay. So with that as a general idea, we can build a framework for threads, support multi-threading, and as such, get execute more instructions per unit time. Okay. So now I am on slide 8, thread versus process. Okay. Right. So the question is, when should you make something a thread, and when should you make it a process? So well, you have to look at it intuitively. If you have two tasks, one task is like we talked about, scrolling through a web page, and the other task is loading an image onto a web page, then it's natural that both of them should be threads of the web page process. Right? If you have a task in which you're uploading an image to Facebook, right, and if you have another task in which you're creating a slide in PowerPoint, naturally they're part of separate processes. So intuitively you have to see where they fit in. When can you make them threads? When they both those sets of instructions intuitively belong to the same process, and they can run in parallel. Okay. So another example of a multi-threaded application, web server, right? Separate threads for each client request. Okay. So let's say you have a web server, Amazon's web server, Flipkart's web server, any newspaper web server, so on and so forth. ID Roper's web server. So eventually what will happen is it will get a bunch of client requests. Many people want to do online shopping. So each of them will have communication with the web server, right? Shopper 1, Shopper 2, Shopper 3, Shopper 4. So we have 4 connections between 4 clients and the web server process. So if you have a single threaded web server, right, no multi-threading, so we create a separate process to serve each request. Okay. Separate process to service each request. Okay. And note that here each client process would in many ways be similar to the other client process. Okay. So for example, they would they all want to connect to a web server, they all want to browse certain items, they may want to buy something, so that process of purchasing something is very similar. They click on an item, add it to cart, check out, link with their payment gateway, and so on. Right? So let's say in this scenario we had a single threaded web server. Okay. So what we have here is a web server which accepts client requests. What are those client requests for? Web pages, image, sound, and so on and so forth. Right? So web server accepting client requests to access that web page, access the content on that web page. Right? Now a busy web server may have several, or maybe if it's Amazon or some Flipkart, thousands of clients concurrently trying to access it. Right? So let's say at one particular point of time, let's say right now, you may have several or hundreds or thousands of clients trying to access a web server at the same time. Okay. Right. Obviously, more busy the web server is, more concurrent requests it will get. So if the web server ran as a traditional single threaded process, it would be able to service only one client at a time. Right? So you have a bunch of requests, request queue, service one client, right? make a process out of it, execute the instructions needed to service that client, and then go to client number 2, right? So that is one option. And then look at client 2, then look at client 3, then look at client 4, and so on and so forth. So essentially it's single threaded, which means it supports only one thread of or one sequence of instructions at a particular point of time, which means all the others have to wait. So it will do 1, then 2, then 3, then client 4, then client 5, and so on. So which means that a client might have to wait for a very long time for the request to be serviced. Okay. One option you can have is, one solution is to have the server run as a single process that accepts multiple requests. Okay. And when the server receives a request, it creates a separate process to service that request. So you have a web server process, and every time you have a client process or a client request, you create a separate process out of it. So 10 client requests, 10 processes. Okay. So one thing we note that process creation is time consuming and resource intensive. Okay. So for each process you have to create an address space, you have a code segment, text segment, all those data structures need to be initialized and you have to work with them. Okay. So the question is, if the new process will perform the same task as the existing process, why incur all that overhead? So because conceptually, if you look at it, each client request is having a similar piece of code. So each request is very similar from the other, right? So like if they're accessing Amazon, the only difference could be they're browsing different pages or they're buying different items. But many parts of the code will be similar. So if the new process will perform the same task as the existing process, it is better for each client request have it running as a separate thread. Okay, so it is more efficient to use one process that contain multiple threads. So if the web server process is multi-threaded, the server will create a separate thread that listens for client requests. When a request is made, rather than creating another process, the server creates a new thread to service a request and resumes listening for additional requests. So rather than separate process for each request, it creates a separate thread. Because conceptually these are all the requests are similar, executing similar code. So it's better that you make them thread. Soon we'll see that creating a thread is cheaper than creating a new process. Okay. So two things we learned here. One thing was that if the web server is single threaded, performance will be very slow, because it's single threaded. It can support only one sequence of instructions at a time. All others have to wait. So no parallel processing. So it will take a long time. Response times will be very high. Whereas if it it supports multiple requests at the same time, so each request can be executed in parallel, right? Each client request, and therefore it's a throughput. The amount of requests it can handle per unit time will increase. And second thing we learned that for each request it has two options: whether to create a separate process or to create a new separate thread. So what we learned was it's better that it creates a separate thread for each process. So essentially it will have one very large web server process with a lot of memory, and then within that many threads will run, each thread corresponding to a client request. So they will all have their own program counter, their own stack, their own registers, but they will all share the code, open files, and so on. So note that the code section for all of these threads will be very similar, right? Some of it will be different, some of it will be similar, right? The different part would be like for Amazon, as I said, they are looking at different web pages, right? One might look at a web page for phones, one might look at a web page for computers, or they're buying different things. and many parts of the code could be the same. So they're all trying to make a connection to the same web server. While they make connection, once the connection is successful, all the client requests, they land on the Amazon's main web page, right? The code that's executed for adding to a cart is the same, and then when they have to be connected to payment gateway, the code is the same. They're linked to their SBI, their credit card or something. So many parts of the code are the same. So therefore that code can be shared. So it is good to create separate threads. Okay. So creating threads is cheaper than creating processes, lesser work to be done by the OS. So because you see that every time you're creating a new process, you have to find a new address space, right? Whereas for all the threads share the same address space of the process. So you only allocate the address space once, and then all threads live in that same address space. So the overhead for looking for an address space again and again is reduced when you're creating threads. And it may so happen that you may not find that amount of free memory, so then you have to do disk IO, so that leads to even more overhead. Okay. And many of the data structures will be shared. So code will be shared, data will be shared, many files will be shared. Whereas for a process, it will have to create a separate code, separate data, separate files, so more work. So in other words, if all the tasks are doing something similar, better to make threads out of them. Okay. So I hope this part is clear. Okay. Okay. So now I am on slide number 9, and here we see a memory layout in which we have one process that consists of multiple or in this case 2 threads. Okay. So what we say is in general each process may have multiple threads of control within it. So a thread of control is just a thread or a sequence of instructions which are executed, as it says, sequentially. So each process may have multiple threads within it. So here we have one particular process which has 2 threads within it, and here what you see is, if you recall, the text or the code section was shared, right? So what exactly does the text section contain? It contains the instructions, the code for the process. So here note that each process each thread does not have its own text section. Rather, all threads belonging to a process share the process's text section. Okay, which is intuitively makes sense, because as such both of these threads, they belong to the same process. So if you're doing a spell check, or if you're doing a word count, both are processes within Microsoft Word, right? So as such, there is one piece of code for Word, and it has one chunk of it deals with word count, one chunk of it deals with spell check. Okay, so intuitively it makes sense for them to share the code. It makes sense for the threads to share the code because they are threads of the same process. Okay. If each of them had different their own code, then maybe it would have been a bit good idea to make them separate processes. So here you can see there's one text section, and then we have 2 PCs, program counters, right? So what does a program counter do? Program counter is a register that contains the address of the instructions currently being executed. So both threads are executing different instructions, which means they have different values in the program counter, right? So you can see PC1 and PC2. So PC1 is in one location, one memory location accessing a certain instruction. PC2 is in another memory location accessing another instruction. All instructions are stored in the text section. And then you have the spaces allocated to threads. So note that all threads share the address space of a process. So thread 1 and thread 2 we have. They have their own SPs. So what is SP? SP is a stack pointer. So small register that stores the address of last function call. So we note that each process gets its own stack, right, independently, and then which can grow or shrink. So each has its own stack pointer, and stack pointer is growing in separate directions. And then you have the heap static data. So this is one way in which two threads can be organized within the address space of a single process. So of course we can have more threads also, 5, 10, whatever the number could be. Okay. So I hope it is clear, right? Okay, now I am on slide number 10, and this just shows a picture of the multi-threaded server architecture. So I can see one side you have the client, right, requesting the server for the web page, right, and every time we have a request from one particular client, what does the web server do? It creates a new thread to service the client request. Okay, so creating a new thread, and then that thread will contain all the instructions needed for that particular client request. So this as opposed to each client request resulting in the generation of a separate process. So if you recall, we had discussed each of these client requests. They have many parts of the code which is similar. So it makes more sense to create threads. They're all client requests accessing the same web server. Okay. And of course it's multi-threaded, so which means once a server creates a new thread to service a request, one particular client request, and then the servicing of that client request starts, it can immediately resume listening for additional client requests. So it's a multi-threaded web server. While processing for a request is going on, it can listen to additional requests. So of course, if you have 1,000 requests per minute, if you don't have multi-programming, your response times will be extremely high, because you process only one request at a time. Okay. So this is it shows here how a multi-threaded web server can result in good parallel performance and high throughput, right? Larger number of requests serviced per unit time. Okay. Now I am on slide number 11, and the title of the slide is multi-threaded kernel. Okay. So kernels can also be multi-threaded. So whatever concepts we were talking about, those were all in terms of user processes, right? But kernel processes can also be multi-threaded. Same logic holds. So all modern kernels are multi-threaded. They support multi-threading. There are several threads operating in the kernel and performing tasks which such as managing devices, managing memory, handling interrupts. So once again, you can see these can be performed in parallel, right? Because you're accessing or you're supporting many programs at the same time. So for each program, you'll have device management, memory management, interrupt handling. So while a thread is looking into managing memory, another thread can look at interrupt handling. Third thread can look at device I/O. Okay, so for each kernel process, we can have set of threads, and the main idea is the same. Each thread executes independently of the other thread in that particular process, and each thread is run on a separate CPU, and therefore the finish time of the process is reduced. So exactly same logic that we applied in user level processes holds for kernel level processes as well, right? So for each kernel process we can have a set of threads, each performing a task, and then importantly each thread running in parallel, right? So multi-threaded kernels. So if we want to see a list of all kernel threads running, sometime back we looked at this PS tool, process snapshot. So if you do PS minus EF, right, PS minus EF, it will show, it will display a list of all the kernel threads running on this Linux. So just go to a terminal and type PS space minus EF. So if we do a man PS, right, let me just do that, man PS, takes me to the Linux manual page, see if I can get information about the flags. So PS report a snapshot of the current process. To see every process on the system using standard syntax, use PS minus EF. Okay. And another variation is PS minus ELF. Let me try that. So PS minus ELF. Let me just make sure I go up to where my output starts. So now I have information about all the kernel threads which are running. Okay. So Kworker and Snapd, Genome Shell, iBus, Clipboard, bunch of power threads running, and large number of Genome Shell running, number of mouse threads, number of keyboard threads, number of color threads, number of housekeeping threads. So housekeeping is just managing the OS resources, number of worker threads, right? So you can do PS minus EF or PS minus ELF to display all the kernel threads running on a Linux system. Okay, so examining the output of this command will show kernel thread K thread, right, with PID2, which serves as the parent of all kernel threads. Okay. So if you look at it, yeah, it is displaying it. So in this, after typing PS minus EF, if you see the thread number 2, K thread, right? So this is the parent of all the kernel threads, and its ID is 2. So generally, higher in the tree a thread or process appears, lower will be its ID. So the root process will have a small number, and then user processes will have large numbers. Kernel threads, kernel processes will also have small numbers, you can see. Okay, so like this you can look at the output, and you can see all these threads, and then it would be a good idea to search for a particular one and find out more about it. Right? Kworker thread. So what is this Kworker thread? Right? You can find out more about it. Okay.